And then, so in the mindset that you have, are you in a defeated mindset or are you in a victory mindset? And I think that our words are an indicator of that.
Right? Think of leadership, but now think followership. And it caused me a lot to realize good leaders are phenomenal followers.
And I really have a deep sense that a majority of people watching this will relate to this one. And that is, the obstacle doesn't stop you, you do.
And there's a saying among all of us that whenever something heavy is coming down, we're like, light the barbecue, invite the friends, something big's coming. And that's always like you're saying, a hope, right? And what is your hope in, right? Hope is in the life that God has for you. And this thing that you're going through now, is this self-inflicted for your detriment, or is it divinely inflicted for your purpose, for your growing, right? Is it the dross being scraped away from the top of the forge, the gold forge? Because we all have dross in there somewhere, and it's got to be scraped away. And sometimes it doesn't feel good to get heated up, right? It doesn't feel good to encounter a hardship. But when you encounter the hardships, that's whenever you really shine through, and I think you really grow. You grow quite a bit.
If you're new or watching this as a replay, welcome. We're so glad that you're here. Please subscribe on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and YouTube, and consider, if you're able, to become a paid subscriber on defenders-live.com. Your support is the only way I'm able to continue doing this labor of love. And also, if you're looking for exceptional firearms and self-defense training, go to defenders-usa.com and look at the calendar to see what's coming to your area this year. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Defenders Live. I am your host, Lora Thorson. Tonight, I have a special treat for you. I have a couple of guests on who you may or may not know. We've been in training in Montana for the last 10 days, on and off, but almost 10 straight days. And I am completely exhausted. I hit the ground running after the training was over, and here it is Wednesday, and it's show day. And I don't feel as though you should see a rerun of any kind. So I brought on a couple of good friends and training partners, Mike Galik from Arizona and the founder of Defenders USA, Adam Winch. And we're going to be discussing some lessons learned over the last 10 days of training. So Mike and Adam, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Good morning or afternoon, whatever it is.
It's always good morning, isn't it? So I have some ideas. I have a few lessons that I learned over the last 10 days, and I'd be interested to hear what you guys learned, if anything, and or what you observed, because it was pretty intense at times and exhausting at times, just on a food and rest like level of just operating mentally and physically. And I, for one, have to say that I am just so glad that I have been preparing myself physically for this, because I feel like my body held up decently well, though I did hurt myself once, but I came back. I noticed there were a lot of the other students as well who were struggling a little bit physically, I think. And that is a factor that I think people don't really think a lot about in training, because most training courses are just a day or two. And even in a day or two with Adam Winch, people are dropping like flies sometimes. Mm-hmm. So what were your guys' observations?
Don't scare them away.
Well, you'll draw the right people. But what were your guys' observations around those areas?
Mike?
Well, what I learned is I can't shoot a rifle. I learned that much. So I hadn't picked up an AR since 2013 to really shoot one, and I was borrowing your gun, and I realized that, I got to change everything about shooting a rifle. But then the way you explained it and how the class progressed, it was very easy to know the concepts that you were trying us to get to know. And really quick, I was able to to apply those and then get results with it. But man, I kept saying I'm like a duck swimming in toothpaste. It was like, it was just hard going, man, just getting started. Then once I got started, I felt a little more comfortable, but then the fatigue came in, because how often do you hold up, a 5-pound weight in front of you for hours and hours and hours? So I was a little bit fatigued after the first day, but it was, I learned quite a bit in that really, really quick in the class.
And maybe you should explain, Adam, what all we did in those 10 days so people can know.
Oh, well, we started out.
Or what didn't we do?
Yeah. So we started out with a 2-day fighting rifle, right? There's a huge amount of people up in the Montana area that I've trained for years, and they're extremely highly trained, right? Ninja-like almost. And because after the fighting rifle class, we're going into 4 days of small unit tactics. Because of that, I wanted to get them plussed up on the rifle. Not so much the handgun. They're all very, very well trained. But I wanted to ensure people were plussed up on the rifle. And then new people who needed it, of course, obviously. It was an open enrollment class. And I forget what it was, Laura, Mike. I think we had 28 or something like that people for 2 days in the rifle class.
A lot of people.
Just phenomenal. And it ranged literally from, what do we have? The youngest was a 12-year-old little girl. Mm-hmm. Little Sadie, and she looks like she's 5, but 12-year-old girl, and all the way up to normal everyday people. But so we did 2 days of fighting rifle, which is a lot. And like Mike said, I mean, a lot of people come in thinking they know how to use a rifle and use it pretty well, right? Especially the deer hunter types or whatever, or they come in from the military or something, and then they suddenly get humbled and they learn how to start using the rifle the right way from a fighting or defensive aspect. And so we did that. Then we did 4 days of small unit tactics, which was really more of a invitation only course. And I forget our numbers, but we ran 18, 20 something people. Right. Yeah, and it varied up and down over the 4 days based on people's schedules. Those could come in. I'd say ultimately we probably had 23, 24 different people going through that 4 days, as maybe a few had to come and go. And then after that, we then had 2 days of handguns and home defense, or really defending life within the home. So one day was on the range, and the next day was learning building clearing tactics, home structure tactics, legalese for that, building a mindset and a heart set if you ever have to fight within your home, and what to do, how to set up your own home, how to get everything ready if you have to defend life within your home. And then they started learning how to do that at night, right? Because as Laura wrote once, if you follow Laura on Facebook, she wrote that light can be your best friend or your worst enemy. Well, you need to know how to do that, because within your home, if you defend life, it might be in the dark too. So run those all together. It's 8 days of training. And a lot of folks actually went through the entire 8 days like Laura did here. And one, it's exhausting. Two, enough so that, my voice is almost gone. I'm slowly beginning to recover it, but it was a long couple weeks or a couple days.
Could you explain to people too? Because I think I can just hear the comments already on the internet about why on earth would civilians ever need to understand small unit tactics, because that sounds so tactical. But
yeah, it's not
a family is a small unit.
Yeah. I mean, what if Mr. Dirtbag decides, or a couple of them decide to kick in your door at 2 a.m, and it's you, the husband, you, the wife, you, the friends, you, the kid. And if you both are trained, you can now start defending yourself better if you have to. Or what if, they attack somebody downstairs and you're upstairs, or vice versa, and you need to move to that to deal with it. You need to know how to move through your own home, and how to do so with weapons, to consideration of locks and doors, and how light shines, how you use light, what bullets can do if you start using them within the home. What are good things to do so you never have to do this within your own home? There's so much to this, and it's really just the idea of learning to have to work with and defend even around your own family. And then in some cases, right, this small unit tactics, we had I think a couple different churches, at least 2 different churches that were there, certainly one. And this was a large portion of their church security team. And church security teams need to learn to be able to move with each other, how to communicate with each other, how to fight together, how to think together. And this was what that was. So it wasn't, though we had in some of the stuff, we had some military types in there that are currently active military. It was really geared towards, the one or two, three different small teams that might work together.
And I think that for me anyway, the thinking aspect of it was the most valuable, because you said before, this is a thinking man's game.
Yeah. I mean, luck, fate, has something to do with it, but the more trained and really the more thoughtful you are, the more you pre-think through your tactics through ahead of time, the more thoughtful you are in your approach to this with the context of reality actually in there, the more you can do and just act and react without thought later. So therefore it becomes a lot easier. And this is why good warriors win, is they prep and think it through ahead of time before the actual thing happens. Though it will never be exactly the same as what you think, as long as you've given a good dose of reality of what it actually could be like, and you've thought it through from so many aspects and repped it in multiple different ways when that time comes, because the mindset and the heart set is there and the tactics are there and the skill is there. It's able to flow with whatever needs to be done to ultimately win that, if at all possible.
And Mike and I were on the same team along with Brent, and we wanted Brent on here today, but he must be hunting. We're not sure. But Mike, you and we've only met each other one other time before this class.
Right. I
don't even think you would say we really knew each other very well. No. And we worked together on a team, I would say not seamlessly, but we got better as we went.
Oh yeah. Beginning of the night was always a little bit hiccupy, but right away we start getting into it. You start, like Adam said, you start to read each other's minds kind of, and kind of anticipate what the other individual's doing. And whenever you're going to accomplish the task at hand, you kind of have the same goal. You're aligned in the same goal. And that was kind of cool to see.
It was fun. I thought.
Well,
I think I still have some pepper marks whenever I was one of the active shooters. Everybody had to come in and find and get me.
Well, and here's the lesson, right? If you're going to work with other people, you have to know how to look for work, right? Constantly look for work. Meaning, if Laura's tied up doing something over here, Mike should be going over here in a sense, or at least the attention is there. While you cover each other, you got to learn how to move together. You've got to learn how to cover each other else, and more importantly, learn how to trust each other. If Mike's dealing with this or Brent's dealing with that, then Laura's got to deal with this. And you've got to be able to have trained with each other so well that you can trust them to do their job. And in this training, you learn when suddenly you're not doing your job, bad things happen. So you've got to learn how to, one, do the job, then look for work, and then start working together, and then trusting each other, and then flowing off each other. Because, right, if you guys go into a room, somebody's got to take one side of the room, somebody's got to take the other, and you've got to learn how, one, to get in there in a way that's safe, or the best for that moment in time, and then to also truly cover everything while you also cover each other.
And one of the biggest lessons I learned the hard way, I learned a few lessons the hard way over this training, was that I learned when I was pulling security one time that I was looking, but I was not seeing. So the difference between looking and seeing is a big, big difference. I remember when Steve Tarani was on the show, he talked about that, how when we're observing things, we need to actually see and not just look. And I was caught looking and not seeing, and Adam snuck up on me and got me. So that was a hard lesson to learn.
Well, and here's another one for you. Is that when you've gone to that much training, right? Laura, you're extremely highly trained, right? With a handgun, now starting to be with a rifle, and in tactics and in thought process. Mike, you are extraordinarily highly trained, right? I mean, both of you. I think all three of us, if we ever had to, I'd take any one of you in my foxhole. And I would bet if the day came, you'd take me in your foxhole, right? Because the mindset is right, the tactics is right, the training is right, and we've worked at it very well. We've given serious thought to it. and we've solidified our hearts. And the lesson for others here is the same thing. If you're the person that is going to go to this much of training, right? And we know people in the gun world who have truly trained themselves so well and gone to so much training. At a certain point, it now becomes your calling. I would tell you, it becomes your job. And I would challenge you to be, if that day ever comes, that if you're so well trained, you have to answer that call, right? If bad things are happening somewhere else, there comes a point, if there's nobody else to do it, then here, my Lord, send me. Here, my Lord, you've chosen me. You've given me this passion and this training to be able to do. And at a certain point, to not be able to use that for good, if that day ever comes, I would tell you, when you're that well trained, you've now shirked your calling and your duty before God. And that is something I want others to consider thinking this through. There's a lot of gun folks that are going to watch this channel. Is your training good enough? Is your mindset solid enough? Are your tactics solid enough that if the day comes when, the balloon goes up, the bad things happen, are you going to answer the call? And are you ready to do that? And have you actually realized that at a certain point with a certain amount of training, you are the only one that can do it, and to not do so would be, I would tell you, wrong before the Lord.
Yeah, well, we all have a plan and a purpose for our lives. That's something I've learned. And whenever you go against God's plan for your life, there's a consequence somewhere in there, either for yourself personally or for others, that you fail, like you said, to answer the call.
Well,
one thing I've learned by training with you is I thought I was ready. I thought I had some skill set, but then whenever you get on the range and you say, okay, this is the standard we're going to attain to, it's like, yeah, I found myself lacking in a few areas, which you leave the range and you're kind of, you kick yourself a little bit, but on the same token, you realize where you could get better. And then the next time you go to the range, or the next time you go to one of your classes, it's like, okay, I'm better than I was last time. And that's a positive, right? Mm-hmm. You're never going to be as good as you want to be, but you're better than you were last time. And I think that's something I always remind myself as I move forward. And then whenever you go into, let's just say, your life out in the world, you have a skill set where you're not really worried if you have to use it. But maybe before, your skills weren't proven. And I think that holds a little bit of value as well.
Failing successes, right? Mm-hmm. Right. How many times, all of us, to include those watching, you've gone to the range and you've failed your way to success, right? And you get a little bit better and you try a little bit more and you think it through, and mastery is always in the nuance. You find a tiny little nuance that gives you a little bit more of an edge than before, a little bit more. And I have seen, like in my life, I have failed my way to success so many times that it's just ridiculous. And I mean, if you're not failing on your way to where you're trying to go, you're probably not trying hard enough, and you're probably not doing something very challenging for yourself. And if you're that mindset that I'm going to train myself to at least protect myself and maybe my close knit, then you're, if you don't have that mindset, you're not going to find failure. But if you start becoming also that mindset that it's not just me and my close knitness, my family, my close knit friends, maybe it's that stranger out there, right? How big is your love? If your love is big enough that you will go to that stranger and you've taken the time to train yourself, to be able to get to that point where you can start helping others, even those you don't know, boy, the failure rate to get to that success level is going to be massive. And that's okay. That's part of the process. And what a good thing.
I'm really glad that you're talking about failure. Mike, did you have something else?
Well, it's like, how many times in your life have you put yourself out there where you're really nervous to go to, right? Maybe it's a test or an exam or a class of some sort. Maybe it's like public speaking. If you have to go to do a public speaking event, you're kind of nervous on the inside and you kind of don't want to do it. But then at the end, you're kind of like, I'm glad I did that because I put myself out there and I learned something I didn't know when I woke up this morning. And I think whenever it comes to training, there could be a hesitancy about looking bad, being bad, having an accident, God forbid, right? But whenever you put yourself in those stressful situations just to learn, there's a learning in that in itself. I think that's very valuable.
Yeah, because ultimately what you're learning is about yourself, not so much about the technique of what you're doing, I think. I think
Right.
you're
And then
learning about who you really are.
right. So whenever we were inside of that apartment complex and everybody had their airsoft guns, right? It's like before it was just, okay,
Fun and
pretend, so to
games.
speak.
Yeah.
Then you got a consequence. So
Yeah.
now, are your skills up to par? Did you learn the curriculum and can you put it to use now? And that was kind of a nervous point. It's like, okay, well, now it's real. Let's go see if all this stuff works. And then you get tagged. And you're like, okay, well, this is where I was wrong in that area. So that was kind of fun to see.
Yeah.
The beginning of the class, I was nervous, but at the end of the class, I thought, man, that was so much fun.
Hey guys, I would like to invite you to something new that I'm offering. I am going to be hosting a live Zoom call once a month for my paid subscribers. I really want to offer something special, something valuable, and something with a personal touch to you every month. And this is my way of helping you guys on your journey. And what you can expect is a variety of different topics, all within 4 buckets that I talk about on Defenders Live, which are health and well-being, mental and emotional health, spiritual fitness, and self-defense. So once a month, I am going to be presenting some questions to you during that Zoom call. We're going to have a conversation live, and there's a good chance that the founder of Defenders USA, Adam Winch, might be on that call as well. So I invite you to join me on the Defenders Live community. As a paid subscriber, you will be getting emails about these once a month. You can sign up for this by going to defenders-live.com and becoming a paid subscriber. I hope to be talking to you soon and seeing you in the live Zoom calls. Thank you so much for your support of Defenders Live. Yeah. It was a roller coaster ride for me personally, and I wanted to touch on something real quick, and then we can move on if that's okay with you guys, that I think is really important. And that is, you were talking about failure earlier, Adam, and you and I both know this inside story of an epic failure that I had this past week in a judgment call, basically. But I want people to learn from my failure and my mistake, because what I did was I made a judgment call without having all the information. And it doesn't need to be a long, detailed explanation of what exactly happened. I don't know if that's really helpful to people, but I think that in my the example that I want people to know about is that I overreacted in a situation where I didn't have all the information. And I thought that I was rightly justified in having the reaction that I had, which is it was a very, very strong reaction of anger, right? But I was talking to someone about it the other day, and this goes back to our God conversation, I guess. This all ties back to him, because what that person said to me was that perhaps in that moment I was asked, did you ask God for discernment in that moment, or were you just so sure? And I reflected back on that moment of the reaction that I had, a really inflated reaction. I mean, severe activation in that moment. And God was not in the picture for me at all. I was so sure that I was right in that moment that I did not take the time and calm myself down to reflect and say, is that true? And ask him for discernment and guidance. I just took the bull by the horns, and I just said, I know what's right. And this is right. And this is justified. And it was an epic failure on my part. Thankfully, I was surrounded by people who know me well, who gave me grace. Thank you, Adam, for giving me grace, who forgave me for what I did. And, but that's important, even in the heat of the moment, to be aligned with God and say, am I really right in doing this? And not just forgetting about him and shoving him away, because in that moment, I actually could feel that separation now, reflecting back on that. And I don't ever want to do that again. Well, was that vague enough for the audience?
Donkey punching some dude would have made you feel pretty good in the moment, wouldn't it?
It would have, yeah. Do you guys have any thoughts on that?
Well,
Have you ever been in a situation like that?
I'll speak about your situation. It wasn't just the incident that made you mad. It ruined half of your day, and you're stewing on it for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
And that kept you, I think, a little bit, your head in two different spots. You had your head in the training spot and your head in the incident. And you weren't fully able to commit.
Yeah. Because even hours after it happened, I still didn't have all the information. So I was still operating on old information that wasn't true. Mm-hmm. And I didn't realize it. So that's just crazy how something like that can hang on, or you can allow it to hang on for a long time.
Well, that goes back to what the dark side's plan is, right? Dark side he doesn't care what you think. He cares about how you react. Mm. So if there's something that's going to happen to make you react a certain way, then that's something you really have control over, is your reaction.
Didn't feel like it in the moment.
Yeah. But isn't it good to be able to feel the grace, to feel the love of people who care, who will have no issue with you going off and go, wait a minute, we're just going to let this play out, and that's okay. And
then Mike says to me, only the second time he's ever met me, and what did you say? You are human, or something like that.
Oh, yeah.
What I learned about you?
I learned something about you, that you're just a normal human. Yeah. You see you on this live, and you're so nice and bubbly and have all these good things to say. And you're thinking, man, how can somebody be so nice and put together all the time?
I'm not.
And then I saw you when you were kicking dogs and cats, and I was like, okay, yeah, she is like the rest of us.
Yeah, I am. I'm a hot mess like everybody.
Cats should be kicked.
All right. Well, I have one more thing here, and we can go wherever you guys want to, but I want to touch on one more thing, a lesson. Well, I learned two more, but this one I have a little bit more fleshed out. And the exercises that we did over the last 10 days showed me this, like, over and over and over and over again. But I think that this concept is intellectualized, but not always practiced in real life. And that is the true concept of leadership. To me, the true concept of leadership requires a person not to be in the front, but to know where to be and how to serve at any time in any capacity with humbleness. I didn't always observe good leadership, not talking about you, Adam, I'm talking about our teams, but I didn't always observe good leadership because I think there's a misconception, at least to me, that leadership means always being in the front and telling people what to do. And it's really not that at all. And I wrote a little bit about it. I think the best leaders support the group from all sides at all times and easily transition from leading to following as needed. The best at leadership are the ones who sometimes don't look like a leader by our society's way of seeing it. Many times they're the quiet guys and gals who are patiently observing, and at just the right time they step up and direct when needed, then fall back to wherever they're needed in other areas. And they're many times out of the limelight. The best leaders support and encourage. They're tough, but gentle and kind just the same. They're smart and courageous, wise and humble. And true leaders are people like you talk about, Adam, who you would have with you in any situation, people you truly trust, people who are there to serve others. And I'm not saying all of those people weren't there to serve others, but we all have our blind spots, I think. But I think that I think about talking about leadership in this way is important. What do you guys do? Are you guys in agreement with me on that, or?
Well, I got an opportunity to be around a couple of amazing leaders. Pastor Billy's one of them. Mm-hmm. Adam, I get to spend a lot of time with you too. You're another amazing leader that I've seen. And it seems that leaders align the team into a common direction, right? So if your team is in a bunch of different areas or headed in a bunch of different ways, then you're probably not going to go very far. But if you can align your team and say, this is our goal, this is our objective, this is your role in this objective, now we're all aligned, headed in the same direction. And I think that is very valuable. And I think that's what creates a good leader, is to be able to have big picture in their mind, but also tell their team their role in that picture. And I think if a good leader can do that, then that team will get to move pretty quick.
I would agree, right? The leader sets the vision or the concepts, right? Finds the way to help train those who are willing to be there, right? Can motivate those who want to be there, but sometimes, the heart flags, the intention wanes, the desire to even be sometimes lessens. And a good leader, through their life, through their knowledge, their experience, should be somebody who can find a way to, in the small ways, encourage others when maybe the attention is beginning to flag, to bring the attention back, right? Should be able to be a motivator of people. I think needs to be an extremely good reader of people, and be able to decode what seems to be going on behind the eyes, and know them well enough, those that they're leading, that when something is off, they can sense it and tell it, and probably have a general idea why, right? Whether it's family, whether it's work issues, whether it's financial, just have a general idea so you can understand them and reach them at their level. And I think too, when you can touch the heart of those who want to follow and want to lead, by being willing to lead, but also being able to accept their leadership, right? To be able to follow them even at times, as long as the leader can continuously maintain the bigger picture, the bigger vision. I think that when you can do that, and you can relate on such a small level, a personal level, to people outside of just the mission itself, just the thing itself, I think that you can build an incredible team. And then all you got to do now and then is step in, add a little bit of refinement, add a little bit of direction, and give a massive amount of trust, and allow us as a group to move together in this without being a dominate, right? Without dominating it. There's so much more I could do. This is a really good topic. I hadn't thought it through as well, but
kind of blindsided you guys, didn't I?
It's an excellent thought process. And put it this way, I was on the SWAT team, and we were doing a pretty big op, and it was actually a citywide thing. And we got called out the last second. I mean, I jumped into my vehicle, civilian clothes, grabbed all my SWAT jammies, threw it in there, took off to where I was supposed to be, and a big multi-agency operation. And at a certain point, because SWAT operators are called to be creative and to sometimes think outside the box, I always think outside the box, and occasionally you may have to go against an order, occasionally, if it's truly needed. Well, one time I decided to go against an order that really wasn't needed, but, a little bit aggressive and like to get into the stuff. And I went against an order, and I got in a lot of trouble for it. And ultimately, I ended up having to write a massive paper on followership, right? Think of leadership, but now think followership. And it caused me a lot to realize good leaders are phenomenal followers, right? Good leaders need to be deep thinkers, and good leaders need to be very, very good with the interpersonal on the minor levels of people's lives. And I think a good leader has to be able to follow the people they're leading while they're also leading and motivating them. I know that sounds bipolarish, but I found for me that's true. Maybe that doesn't work for everybody else, but what a great topic.
You have anything, Mike?
Well, I think Adam said quite a lot there. If I look at, I guess I can only speak from my perspective, right? So if I look back on my life, and it's like, when did I follow and when did I object to my followership? And I think whenever I have a vested interest in the goal, I tend to work a little better. Maybe I tend to work a little bit harder. I'll invest more resources, personal resources in that goal, if you will, if I know that I'm invested into it. But if I'm just, let's just say, working at Taco Bell, right? What's my goal is to get a paycheck. I'm not really interested in getting the customers around. I'm probably not going to put very much work in it. So I think in our topic of what is a good leader is saying, hey, this is why you're important to this task, and this is your value here. And then knowing what that individual values the most. Do they just value a title? Because there's some people that value titles, and you give them, you're the manager of, I don't know, sweeping the floor, and they get pretty excited about it. Then other people don't care about a title. They care more about monetary stuff. So a good leader, I think, can identify, like what you said, Adam, what's behind the eyes, what's the real motivation. And if you can identify that within your people and then speak to that, I think you'll probably get a little more out of them.
Agreed. Okay, I have one last thing. I feel like I'm just throwing baseballs at you guys because we never talked about any of this before. I was just originally going to turn this into a monologue. This was going to be an extended tidbit of the week. And then I'm like, I don't want to sit here and talk for 30 minutes by myself.
So before we do that, can we go back to your leadership?
Sure.
If you're in this gun world, if you're going to training, especially if you get yourself off just square range, right, perfectly on the line gun training that's out there, if you start moving into other things, you're a leader. Maybe not of the biggest team, of the biggest thing out there, but you're a leader. And because you've taken on that mentality of, one, able to defend yourself or at least work towards it, two, defend your own, and then three, possibly, and our country needs this, possibly defend others too that you don't know. You're now a leader. And any way you can use not just your gun training, but other things in life to grow your ability to lead others, I think, one, the better off this nation will be, but the better off your life will be, and the better you can make others' lives. And is that not what's most important for others? One, before the Lord, and then for others. And the more you can develop that skill of leadership through anything it is, I don't care if it's working in a sewing bee, right? It doesn't matter to me. But if you can build your leadership skills, the better you can motivate and influence others for the better also. And it starts with leadership. And I think we are called to leadership. And the more you can develop it through whatever technique, the better off everybody will be.
Well said, Adam. So let's finish on one last lesson that I learned. I keep learning this one over and over and over again. So I guess that means I'm not learning the lesson. It's being shown to me over and over and over again. And I really have a deep sense that a majority of people watching this will relate to this one. And that is, the obstacle doesn't stop you, you do.
Mm. Mm. Well, that goes into mindset. Okay, so here's something else. We kind of talked about this a little bit. Is what words are you using? Are those words correct words, or are you using your words incorrectly? And I think if you tend to use your words incorrectly, then your mindset tends to not be correct in whatever goal you're trying to attain.
Example.
I think we had a conversation, if I can let the audience in a little bit, on you lifting, what was it, 240 pounds? Was that the conversation? You're like, I can't do that. I can't do that. And it's like, well, you're using your words wrong. You're already starting off at a bad point. And then Adam's like, you definitely can do that. And you're like, nah, I don't know. So that's your obstacle, right? You put that obstacle in your own way versus the people that know you best and know that that's not going to be an obstacle for you. But you're using your words incorrectly to the point where I think you got a little frustrated. And you're like, well, how am I supposed to do it then, right? And the only thing you were lacking was knowledge. So you put an obstacle in your brain, but then the way you're able to get over that obstacle is through knowledge.
Yeah, and I think I rephrased my words eventually, but
yeah, you did.
Yeah, words do mean things, and that is one thing that you've planted that seed in my head, Mike, while you were up here, and now I think I'm paying more attention to the words I'm using than I did before. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so thank you for that.
The common denominator in my house, I got 4 young kids, and It's always like, hey, you're using the words correctly, but then it's like looking in the mirror. It's like they're using the words I'm giving them, so it's always a reflection.
What about this? A lack of faith, really even a lack of hope, or could we say flagging perseverance?
Oh,
Here's
them fighting words, Adam.
Here's an example. Some years ago, they did an experiment with some mice, and they'd put a mice in a big thing of water and let it swim. And after 15 minutes, the mice would drown, right? You've heard the story. But usually right before that mouse is going to drown, if they took that mouse out and gave it even just a minute or two of rest and put it back in the water, that mouse would swim for 12, 15, 24, 48 hours. Why? Because that mouse had a tiny bit of hope, right? It was a little bit of hope. When it seemed overwhelming and impossible, they just gave up and quit. But when they suddenly realized there's a slight sliver of hope, if I just keep going just a little bit longer, I just might be saved, right? I might make it. I think the same thing is true in our hearts. If we allow ourselves, even in the worst of the worst, to have hope, to have faith in the good outcome, right? That it's possible, that it just by the mere sliver can still happen. If we give ourselves that, you can go further. And is it not always, I don't know about you guys, is it not always when things seem the worst, seem the most hopeless, seem like there's no way out, somewhere at the very end of what seems like the rope of that thing, it always just seems to work out, right? Mm-hmm. It always seems to happen, right? For you, your faith was deadlifting 245 pounds, and you were like, I can't do it. Yeah, you can. I watched you lift. Shucks, I've been able to slightly be a part of your coaching. I know you can lift it all day. You can lift more than that. But I watched you through Mike's words gain some hope and gain some faith. You know what? Probably within the next month, Lora, you're going to come back on here and report to the few people that are interested. You lifted that 245 pounds.
I probably won't report that.
In fact, you stacked on 5 more pounds plates on each side. You lifted 255 because you can do that, right? Having that faith or hope is a hard thing to do, but I think too many of us have allowed us to slip into the laziness in the heart and the mind of not digging that deep into faith and hope. And if you let yourself have that hope, it'll be just fine.
Well, I'm speechless now.
Yeah, there's a saying, again, I get to be with Pastor Billy quite a bit. And there's a saying among all of us that whenever something heavy is coming down, we're like, light the barbecue, invite the friends, something big's coming. And that's always like you're saying, a hope, right? And what is your hope in, right? Hope is in the life that God has for you. And this thing that you're going through now, is this self-inflicted for your detriment, or is it divinely inflicted for your purpose, for your growing, right? Is it the dross being scraped away from the top of the forge, the gold forge? Because we all have dross in there somewhere, and it's got to be scraped away. And sometimes it doesn't feel good to get heated up, right? It doesn't feel good to encounter a hardship. But when you encounter the hardships, that's whenever you really shine through, and I think you really grow. You grow quite a bit. And then, so in the mindset that you have, are you in a defeated mindset, or are you in a victory mindset? And I think that our words are an indicator of that. So it's like, I can't lift 240 pounds. It's like, okay, well, you're in a defeated mindset right now. And you're like,
someone argue
240 pounds. Well, now you're getting better. And it's like, man, I need to figure out how to lift 240 pounds. It's like, bam, now you're in a victory mindset.
I have a lot of work to do.
You know, when the pressure cooker is getting just too much pressure, right? The finances are rough. The job is hard. The marriage is hard. The kids are getting a little out of order, right? The bank account's too little. I mean, people have been mean to me online, whatever it is, right? When it gets the worst, something good is happening, and you have to have that faith.
Oh, yeah. Light the barbecue.
I see a t-shirt. Well, thank you guys for all of your input. There's no way this show would have been as good without you. I am so blessed to have you both in my life.
Mm-hmm.
Can I add this before you cut us off here, Laura? Right. For those of you watching who come to either our training courses, the other good ones that are out there, I beg you, for your sake and for your family, for what you do, and for this interest you have, this calling you have to become a good defender using whatever tools you use. Move beyond, especially in the gun world, move beyond the square range. Get beyond it. Go to competition, right? Go out there and be uncomfortable. Go out there and fail. Fail over and over. You will fail yourself into success if you're thoughtful and smart. And if you're watching this, you're thoughtful and smart. And move into using guns or fighting in and around your own home, thinking about it at least, or using a dumb gun or using airsoft, right? Think about the preparation of your home. Think of how you pump your gas and how you might take care of yourself there. Think of how you enter and exit a bank or go to the ATM. Go beyond just the standard square range, all proud of your sub-second draw stroke and your bill drills, right? Go far beyond it, because that is a tiny portion of true defense, right? The gun, unfortunately, too much in the gun world, we make it all about the gun. The gun is really only 1 or 2% of the entire process, right? And it really is used to expose flaws and grow skill, but really it shows you. So use what you learn on that range to find other areas far beyond the gun that can help you become the better defender. So ultimately you can go out and live the life that's as full and as good and as right. And if you believe in God, which I hope you will, if you don't already, but you can live the full life God intended you to have, with joy, with the family, in your work process and everything else. And simply the gun is a tiny tool of that. So don't get too invested in it, but grow the skill there so you can live the righteous life you need, while you're also ready to do the skills you need to have outside of just the square range.
Well said. Anything else to add, Mike, before we wrap up?
I think we are who we think we are. We are who God says we are. And I think whenever you come to learn that's your identity, I think your life will change drastically, because now it's no longer you having to do everything. You're just part of the ride. And for me, whenever I figured out that switch, life got a little bit different. The challenges didn't get easier, but my thought process definitely did.
Adam,
and one thing about the course in Montana was there was 2 parts to that course. One was the curriculum, which was amazing, and it built on top of each other. But the other part was the people. The people were a big inspiration for me personally in Montana to realize that, yeah, there's good people everywhere. But these people are really invested in themselves and in what God defined them to be. So that was pretty exciting for me to see.
You fit right in, Mike. All right. Well, thank you for your time today, guys. I love you both. And be sure to go to defenders-usa.com if you want to learn more about training with Adam. And we'll see you next time.